I played a game, and you're going to judge me for it, I think.
I don't think so.
I think you do in your own little way in your mind. I played Life is Strange Double Exposure, which is another Life is Strange game. Yeah, so like, these are my like special interest type games, even when they're not very good. It came out last year. It is episodic, but it was released all in one go, so it's just formatted as episodes. Same thing that happened with True Colors, the last main Life is Strange game. They're moving forward with this format, which speaks well. It's published by Square Enix, but it is developed by Deck 9, who are now like the custodians of the franchise. It's the fourth main installment, and it is a direct-ish sequel to the original game from 2015. The plot follows Max Caulfield, the protagonist from the first game, who is now 28 and in grad school. She's on like a photography art major, which is pretty cool, honestly. And she has new powers. So in the first game, it was rewinding time, and then there was a brief stint of hopping into a separate timeline. This game is all timeline shenanigans. Basically, the primary plot is her new setting of friends at college. Some of them are colleagues, some of them are other students. She's also a teacher's assistant, as you are typically when you're in like grad school. So there's a wide variety of students. There's some faculty, and you get acquainted with her new group of friends. You're out doing photography, all that stuff. And her best friend gets moited by a gunshot. It's very interesting because of plot shenanigans. And it's like, okay, cool, a student died. That student also happens to be the daughter of the not headmister, but like the head of the school. I can't remember the name. That's like brain, whatever the fuck, the head of the school is a woman, for one. So it's interesting. She's a Christian Arab woman. So it's a change in tone for the school. You can get all the implications you want out of that. And then her daughter is friends with Max. She winds up dead during some weird shit, and weird shit starts happening. Your brain goes cuckoo banana, as it does in these games, and you then go on a murder mystery to try to solve what the fuck happened. So Max has suppressed her time rewind abilities because of the events of the first game, where you either have to kill your best friend / lover or sacrifice the entire town you live in because her powers manifest like a hurricane of consequences. Very heavy-handed metaphors, etc., etc. This game intends on honoring both endings of the first game, and that's actually a lot of the controversy around this game. And I think it's kind of dumb because so in my multiple playthroughs of Life is Strange, I always save the town because I'm not an asshole. Your love interest in that game is not like the best person in the world. She's a teenager, big deal. Like, people are messy. So the game, the playthrough that I had of Double Exposure is the ending that I let her die, the town is fine. So that actually flowed really well for this game because now it has like relationship trauma and trying to develop new love interests, which these games are kind of known for. There's always romance options, and I feel like that actually worked really well. I only have done the one playthrough, so I haven't done it with the I wiped out an entire town ending, but the big controversy with that is you still end up breaking up with that girl anyways, like between games. So it kind of like it does cuck out, which I understand why, because of what this game wants to do, but because the fan base for this game is rabid. It's been around for 10 years. This is like it was 2015 Tumblr, and that still describes these games in like the best way. So like the fan base just grew so attached to Chloe, the love interest of the first game, that's just unfeasible and seems out of character and all that stuff. So I didn't have to worry about any of that, so I just don't really care. So yeah, you solve the mystery by going around campus, talking to your friends, professors, other teachers' assistants, and at some point you like forcefully unlock. You try to use your rewind ability, which you haven't used in 10 years, and it doesn't work. But then somehow you can alternate between two different timelines, one where your friend is not murdered and the one where she is. So then you have to use information from both timelines to solve different mysteries and different plot lines that are interweaving to try to figure out what's going on. Any more specific than that, I feel like, is just like unnecessary nitty gritty, but that's how, like, the plot overview. The big gripe that I have with the plot is not the mechanics of how the two timelines work. I actually really enjoyed it for the sake of acting different around different characters. Like, say you can romance one character in one timeline and a different one in a different timeline, but I guess the only real spoiler, at the end of the game, they get smushed, and now everyone has both memories, and it's really fucking awkward. Like, no matter how the game plays out, everyone has to then deal with having multiple overlapping memories. Max has been exposed as having powers because of plot stuff, as well as another character I won't get into. And she stays in this Vermont college town for sequel bait, of course, and to try to find more people like her that have these weird abilities to try to, I don't know, guide them. She's putting together a team. You know how it is. It's a really good ending for that. There is a little bit at the end that I don't appreciate. It's not necessarily a post-credit scene, but it's after the epilogue that I just thought was kind of stupid. But it does seem that this team wants to return to Max at some point. Maybe it won't be the next game, but they might do it sometime in the future. Maybe they'll bring the other characters in, something like that. And on the one hand, the fact that they're mostly anthology games is really cool because they all have different powers that are used differently, and they're very thematically tied to the character. You know, Max is a photographer. She likes taking photos and like freezing time, so it makes sense that she can rewind it and then have to learn consequences about, like, you actually do have to make choices and stick with it, and so on and so forth for all the characters in the games. So I'm not sure how they would manage to put them all in the same game, but that would be kind of cool. I would at least give them props for trying. So the vast majority of the subplots or side plots of other characters and their worlds, I did think were pretty well fleshed out this time around. You have a couple of best friends. Obviously, one dies. And then the other one is, in the most respectful way possible, like the definition of the, like, chunky black nerd dude. He's great. I love him. He's like a big STEM guy. He's there for, like, astronomy. He's always assembling telescopes, stuff like that. He's a really cool character. He's literally me, but if I was cooler. So you have that. You have some interpersonal drama between some of the staff at the college based on a previous tragedy that happened at the school that you then kind of unfurl as the plot goes along. Turns out that this murder has basically nothing to do with what you think it does, as any good mystery, I guess. And I think that they were all actually woven together pretty well and fairly well developed. There is one character which I do have mixed feelings on. There is another professor at the school. He's kind of a dirtbag, not like a mega dirtbag, but he's kind of pompous. He's a writer. He just published a book that's relevant to the plot. I won't get into that. But there are hints at him having not great relationships with students. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Not like super duper bad, but it's kind of a callback to the first game where the antagonist was one of your professors who was like kidnapping and torturing and taking photos of teenage girls, which is really heavy subject matter, which does kind of come up in this game towards the end. But the game simultaneously wants to make you remember that, but then not do it over again. And I just don't really know how I feel about it. yeah, I just haven't really sorted out how either I would have improved it to be more subtle or less subtle, because it doesn't treat it with the same level of weight, because the primary driving factor of the story is frankly nowhere near that serious as comparison to the first game. There's murder involved in this one, but like this does not end with like you being kidnapped and put in a basement, so the stakes are just different, which I think is nice as a change of pace. It's not trying to go for the same beats, but it just doesn't always land super well. Gameplay is basically an improvement on True Colors, which I ranted about on like the first episode of this show. For the most part anyways, your general walking around click and point type stuff. I think the conversation options are a lot better this time around. It's not as binary options, and a lot of them don't go anywhere. It's not like every conversation has to be directly related to a quest line, or if you don't do this part of this conversation that one time, you'll just miss out on this entire other sub puzzle basically, or something like that. So I think it's a lot more well integrated. The area that the game takes place over is less open than in True Colors, whereas that was a small town, and then like it was like the main strip of a small town, and pretty much all of the stores and homes on that strip were accessible. This one is on a campus, but you're limited to the art building because like that's your major, that's where all your friends are, and like a couple of rooftops and like what's it called? The front lawn, but not literally. It's a term for colleges. It's like that big open thing in the front. Sometimes there's like a pond or a lake or whatever, like one of those. And you're kind of limited to that. So it gives the illusion of being around the same size, but I do think it's actually smaller. And I think that works in its favor. It feels more focused. The time ability, you can hit the left bumper to like glance into the other timeline. So like one timeline is blue and one is orange. So if you're in the blue timeline and you hit the button, then it'll show you where the characters are in the orange timeline as like holograms basically. So you can that's useful for puzzles or trying to figure out information that you need, all that sort of stuff. And then at certain points in the game, there are like a spot where the curtain is thin, basically. Mostly it's a loading screen. Like in areas where there aren't people, like you go in a bar, which is another part of the setting, and you go to the bathroom, like a little hallway, and then you can hit right bumper, I believe, and then switch timelines. It's obviously partially for the sake of not having a loading screen, and also so they don't have to rapidly reset assets while you're looking at them. It just makes for a much cleaner experience, and it also makes sense because you at this time are not trying to use your powers in front of people. So I think that just generally works out really well. The soundtrack and score is really good. I do think it's not quite as good as True Colors was. Some of that is just personal bias. I have stronger feelings for that game, but most of the soundtrack for this one was put together, like the folk Life is Strange ass music, you know what it is, was done by Tessa Rose Jackson, who is really talented, so that was really good. There's a few other songs thrown in there, but she does the majority of the original like lyrical work. The background score is solid, nothing too crazy, just good vibe setting, but nothing too far beyond that. I think True Colors had an advantage because the game was a lot more focused on you being a musician and you had emotion-based powers, so it made sense that music was a lot more thoroughly incorporated. This came out for the actual current generation of consoles, PS5, Xbox Series, Windows, and the Switch port came out like a month later. So we're finally moving on from last-gen consoles. I think it warrants it. It's not a particularly mind-blowing game in terms of graphics. It continues with the art style change from True Colors of, I would say, more, not photorealism, but a lot more, I don't want to say plain because that doesn't sound right. That sounds like a negative, but it's less cartoony and less like pencil or ink on paper, because they're able to do, I believe, motion capture for a lot of the performances. It feels more alive, which is cool. It was also done in Unreal Engine 5, so that's a good example of that finally like breaking into current game releases. I played it on the Series X. In terms of tech problems, I had minimal, no crashes, no freezing. I did at a few points have some serious pop in during pre-rendered cutscenes, or they might be like generated in the moment. Honestly, it's always hard to tell which one's which, because all of the pre-renders are done in the same engine as the gameplay, which is a big favorite of mine. So there is definitely pop in during those moments, but nothing super distracting. It's not like anyone's walking around without their hair or their face isn't working or anything like that. Really good audio performances in terms of technical recording quality, as well as just like actual vocal performances. It was really nice to hear Max Caulfield's voice again, but as like an adult or an older adult, closer in age to where I am now. It was a really good internal dialogue. The only other notes I think I have is this had some really weird DLC stuff. There are no expansions. Some of the games previously have had like little add-on epilogues, like True Colors. This one has a deluxe edition for extra skins for your character, different sweaters and jackets, and that's dumb, but whatever. It's like $20 for a few extra skins, so it's pretty steep, but I don't really care because I didn't buy it. And also the base outfits are all really good. The vibes in these games are always on point. And there is another DLC, which is incredibly strange. It is one extra side mission that is about a missing cat. I don't know why this was DLC. I have no fucking clue. I did buy it and then just play it because I wanted to. It only adds 2 achievements to your achievement list. And it takes like 5 minutes if you know where to go. I don't know what they were thinking with that. It seemed like a marketing gimmick almost, so they could advertise there being a cat in the game, but you actually have to pay for the cat. That was pretty dumb. The bigger issue was that this is one of the games that is starting this new trend of paying more for early release, not for playing beta testing or like open testing, but just if you buy the more expensive version, you can play the game like up to a week early or something like that. And I think that's dog shit for many reasons, but primarily because when it comes to a game like this, where the people who want to play it are there for the story, they don't want to be spoiled, they want to go in fresh, it makes FOMO. So it's like, oh shit, some people could have played this earlier than me. I can't go online, I can't go on my Twitter, I can't go on my fucking Reddit account, because then the people that paid for it are going to be talking about the game before me. And I think that that's a really, really scummy practice that I really hope does not continue with other games, but I'm sure it will.
To be fair, though, Twitter is on its way out. And
this is true.
Reddit subs are usually pretty good about marking things as spoilers or not.
I get that. Like it's less a personal issue. It's more of like, that's why they're doing it, is to make you pay more just to play it a little earlier. It's not for any other updates. It's not to work out any kinks. It's not like it's an early access. It's just, you can play it early if you give us another $20. And that's shit. As far as I know, there is no story DLC or follow-ups planned for this, which I think is a good idea just based on where the game ends. I believe there's another team at Deck 9 working on another game. I have no further details. So yeah, this was very good. It was a good time. I had fun. It did not, as these games try to do, get me super emotionally engaged. I think that some of that is just the subject matter of the game does not get under my skin so much. It's also not necessarily intended to. But I had a really good time. I did care for the characters, which is always like a good indicator of your story-based game having good writing, is caring about the characters. The plot was good for the most part. The ending is just really weird on how it resolves the supernatural, superpowered elements. It ends in a weird spot. It's very odd. I think in my list of Life is Strange games, I think that this is on the same level as Life is Strange 2 ? So like strong B, low A tier. The first game and True Colors are neck and neck for S tier. Despite any criticisms, you can't convince me otherwise. The Before the Storm prequel game is a favorite of mine, despite the fact that the fan base hates it. So that one's also A tier. So this one's somewhere around the middle. It worked well. It played well. I had a good time. I do want to go back at some point to get some additional achievements and do another playthrough of just very different options, romancing different people, blah, blah, blah. But I'm not in a rush. I've moved on to other things. So, meh. I bought it on sale digitally for, I believe, $40 for the base version of the game. So I could have waited, but I'm okay with the price. I'm not mad that I paid as much as I did for it. My total play time was, I believe, about 15 hours or so of actual time in game, not just it running on my Xbox while I go pee. So yeah, that's that.
Excellent. So the clickbait title is, this is possibly the worst Life is Strange game you've played, or your least favorite.
Oh yeah, that's such we're really big fans of clickbait titles here.
Oh yeah.
I don't put out the most robotic, clean cut titles of everything all the time.